Let's find our seats. We're going to get started. Beautiful. Wow. Gabe, did you eat garlic or just notice how everybody's on this side? And he's really a nice guy, really a very, very sweet, nice guy. The screen is. Well, I will tell you this, before the Jewish people were called Jewish people or Yehudim, they were known as the Israelites, the children of Israel. But before they were called the Israelites, they were called the Hebrews. Abraham, of course, was not called an Israelite because Israel is his grandson, Jacob. Abraham was known as Abraham HaIvri. So what are Hebrews? Where's the word come from? In Hebrew, when you want to say the other side, you say Ever, like Ever HaNahar, on the other side of the river. And Abraham came from the other side of the river because he came from outside of Israel and then came to Israel to preach monotheism. But in addition to that, he also was on the other side of the rest of the world because he was the only person that believed in one God, where everybody else worshipped all different kinds of deities. My point is, you're in good company.
And I know you like you.
I'm going to be right here 90% of the time. So first of all, thank you everyone for coming out this evening to spend some time learning, praying, sharing, talking, supporting, exploring, because tonight's program is all of that. When we thought about, what's that? You got company. When Dina and I got back from Israel a couple of weeks ago, we wanted to put together a program really to share what we had experienced, but also tap into what so many others are experiencing at the same time. But the minute that you say Israel, a rush of emotions all come to the forefront. And we tried to capture all of that in the program, which began last Thursday night and continues tonight. So we're going to do some prayer. We're going to do some reflection on the people that we've lost, people that are still in harm's way, those that are fighting to support not only our homeland and the people there, but truly on the front lines of the Jewish world as a whole. And then we're going to hear from our dear friend, Marissa, some of her thoughts and reflections going through this last now almost 12 months. It's shocking just to verbalize that. I'm going to share a little bit of what I learned in my trip, share some pictures, videos from the trip, and then maybe the most important part of tonight's discussion. You'll notice that we have booklets placed throughout the room. We're going to talk about how do we approach this moment? Because one thing we know for sure, the Jewish people never stop. And that's how we've overcome so many periods of trial and tribulation, generations of persecution, because we don't stop. Though we feel, though we bleed, though we grieve, we never stop. So in this moment, how do we move forward? What do we learn from everything that we're experiencing now? And how do we find a path forward, especially in this moment? Because 2 weeks from today, hopefully services will be done by that time, but you'll be in Shul on Rosh Hashanah. 2 weeks from today is the first day of the Jewish New Year. And Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, the head of the year, is all about setting new path, a new course, a new direction, reflection and renewal and rebirth for us, the Jewish people. But when your heart is still broken and you feel despair all around you, how do you chart a path forward? How do you prepare for rebirth and renewal? So it's important that we take these times, we take these moments now to think and reflect so that we can put our head in a positive direction as we prepare to welcome our new year. It's one of the reasons that we start blowing the shofar early. Technically, you don't have to do it till the first day of Rosh Hashanah, but in our custom, we blow it the entire month preceding the Jewish New Year as a way of moving ourselves in that direction, engendering that spirit of return and stopping for reflection. Life moves very quickly. I don't have to tell all of you, you know. So if you don't force yourself to stop and reflect, those moments can pass you by. The next thing we're going to do is say a prayer together. This is a prayer that combines both our acknowledgement and our grief over those that we've lost. And that list, unfortunately, is many, and it grows every single day. Continues to grow every single day. Whether it's soldiers, civilians, it makes no difference. Last week, we went through each one of the hostages still being held. We acknowledged each one. We looked at their photo as a way of remembering that numbers don't really tell the full story. Numbers are just digits, but each one represents an entire world, because we know every human being is an olam maleh, a full world. So I'm going to say the prayer, and then the prayer also asks for God's protection for our soldiers in harm's way and for those hostages still sitting in despair and in their own hell. Misha berach avotenu Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, David, Shlomo, hu yivarech v'yishmor v'yinsor es nedrei. Tzva Hagana Yisrael ushvuya v'eskol achenu hanatunim b'tzara u'b'shivya bavur shekol hakadosh hazeh mitpalel bavuram hakadosh baruch hu yimaleh rachamim alehem yotziem mechoshech b'tzal mavet u'mosratehem yinatek u'memzutukotehem yoshiem b'shivem mehera lechek mishpachotehem yodu l'Adonai chazdo v'niflootav l'bnei adam v'kuyem b'hem mikra Shakatu uftuye adino yeshuvun uvo tzimberina simchat olam arosham sason v'simcha yagiu v'nasu yagon v'anacha v'nomar amen. May you bless our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Aaron, David, and Solomon. Bless, protect, and guard our IDF forces missing in action or held captive, and all of the captives among our brethren, the whole house of Israel, who are in distress or captivity, as we, the members of this congregation, pray on their behalf. May the Holy One, blessed be He, have compassion on them and bring them out from darkness and the shadow of death. And may God break their bonds and deliver them from distress and bring them swiftly back to their families' embrace. Give thanks to God for His loving kindness and for the wonders He does for the children of Israel. And may there be fulfilled within them the verse, those redeemed by God will return, and they will enter Zion with singing and everlasting joy will crown their heads. Gladness and joy will overtake them, and sorrow and sighing will flee away. Let us say amen. Light 2 candles. The lighting of candles is something that we do when we commemorate the soul. The days of someone's passing, annually on a yard site, on holidays when we say Yisker, which of course is coming up in the next month. And the reason that we light candles when we commemorate the soul is that that flame really transcends what we know as gravity. Gravity generally pulls everything down into this world, but the flame fights gravity and seeks to ascend, similar to a soul. A soul that is bound in a body while it lives here in a material physical world, but ultimately that soul is a divine energy. And therefore that soul can never be destroyed. Once it finishes its earthly journey, it simply returns back to its creator. And that provides a comfort to us that even those that have been lost in such painful and tragic ways, that they are not truly lost. Although we mourn their physical presence being taken from this world, their divine energy, the soul, continues to exist in heaven. As I said, this is about sharing, learning, growing, and supporting each other. And that is why the fact that we have a beautiful community is so critical for the Jewish people at this moment. Because each and every one of us has our own thoughts and our own feelings, and you can feel very isolated and alone with your thoughts and your feelings, living in an environment where others may not understand your thoughts and your feelings. That is why it's so critical to come together as a community and to share and to support each other. And that is why we are so privileged and honored to have our dear friend Marissa, who is going to share tonight some of her thoughts and her feelings over the last 11 months, especially as someone that's experienced what it means to have family members as hostages in harm's way, who just recently returned back from Israel, where her husband Tamir's family lives and her extended family live. So without further ado, please welcome our dear friend Marissa. One second. Pull it up here.
So there is going to be one video that I can click on. So
Okay.
it's a sound.
Yeah,
on.
I'll make sure it's on. One second. Yep. Sounds good. Should be all set.
Okay, I'm just press the save
Mhm.
button, right? Okay,
This button.
the next button. Okay, great. Okay, so, hi, my name is Marissa Bergman. I live here in Tampa, Florida. I'm from Fort Myers. And when I was a junior and yes.
Stand a little bit on that so that we don't block the camera when the recording.
Oh, okay, right here is
Yeah,
good.
That's
Okay.
perfect.
Okay, and everyone can see. Okay, so when I was a junior in college, I went on a birthright trip with 3 of my friends from Camp Blue Star. And this is where my connection to Israel really began. And I've had the privilege to going to Israel every summer since 2011. And this is the story of where that began. So on our Israel trip, on our birthright trip, we had a group of soldiers that joined the trip. You might recognize one of the soldiers in this picture here. This was when they were first introducing themselves to our group. And I ended up with one of the soldiers, not on that trip, but I returned to Israel in 2011 for work, and we reconnected. And now we live in Tampa. We have 4 children, and I go back to Israel every summer with our children. So also on the birthright trip, I met so I go to Israel every summer to see Tamir's family mostly. But on the birthright trip, I met Ori and Shula, who on my mom's side of the family, my mother's brother married an Iraqi Israeli, and her sister is Shula, and Shula is married to Ori. So this is how it came to be that we have distant relatives that were directly affected on the day of October 7th. This is all of Ori's family, cousins that were missing on October 7th. We didn't know if they were alive or dead. We didn't know for a few weeks what happened to them. So here is Avshalom Haran, Shoshan Haran, Adi Shoham, Tal Shoham, Yahel, her brother Nave, Sharona Vigdori, Noam, her daughter, Ebiatar and Lila Pinks. Oh my gosh, I never got their last names right. Kipnis, Natalie Ranan and her mom, Yulia, and Paul Vincent was Ebiatar's caregiver. So, yeah, October 7th was a crazy day. Our 4 kids let us sleep in. And so at 8 a.m., I remember very specifically, I was in the bathroom getting ready, washing my face, and I got a call from my sister. And she was like, hey, is your family, is Timur's family in Israel okay? And I said, I didn't read the news yet. I was like, why? What's happening? She's like, I don't know. Something's happening there. It's something crazy is happening. So I said, okay, let me call her and see what's happening. So I called Nitzan right away, Tamir's sister. I was like, hey, are you guys okay? She said, yes, we're okay, but let me call you back. We're just trying to figure out if we should go to Haifa or stay in Tel Aviv. The sirens were going off a lot in Tel Aviv already, and they weren't sure if they should drive to Haifa because, so Nitzan's husband Lior was in the Talpiot unit of the army, which is like very high up secret service type stuff, intelligence. And so whenever something happens, we're always looking to Lior, like, what do we do? So he was just concerned that on the drive to Haifa, what if the Arab Israelis were to join in on what was ever happening in the south? But eventually, like an hour later, I got a call that they had made it to Haifa okay, and everything was fine. They ended up staying in Haifa for 2 months to avoid hearing the sirens. And they were also renting out the bottom part of their townhouse, which had the mamad, the safe room. So they were basically just staying in Haifa. At one point, my sister-in-law would drive the kids back and forth an hour every day, and like sometimes 2 hours in traffic, just so the kids could go to school. And then she'd work from there and then drive them back to Haifa. And eventually they moved back into their Tel Aviv apartment. So that was their story. And then the next day, Sunday evening, I was having dinner with my family here in Tampa, and I got this from my mom. And she said, these are, our distant relatives. We don't know where they are. And, it was very shocking to like be kind of connected to it in that direct manner. So what do? We all felt so horrible. But everyone kind of like rose to action around the world, right? So, Rabbi, you had a big fundraiser here and sent so many things, and I didn't know what to do. And I remember texting Rabbi, like, I don't know what to do. I'm like paralyzed. I can't do anything. I just like could hardly drive my kids to school. So Nitzan, Tamir's sister, was just raising money and doing whatever she could there. And I was begging them, like, come home, just get out of there, just come to Tampa, like, just come for a few weeks, you'll go back later. We weren't sure if that was the attack or if there was more that was gonna happen. But she said, we can't leave, like, this is our home. And what would that teach our children if we leave when this happens? So even though we can't go fight on the front lines, we need to help our brothers and sisters in the South. We need to help the IDF soldiers. And that's what we did. We raised thousands of dollars, and we sent warm Shabbat meals to soldiers. We sent, in the North, we sent medical supplies that they needed. She was in all of these WhatsApp groups and would just get like request after request after request. This is what we need. And we basically did whatever we could, and she would allocate the funds as like top priority. So you might recognize these pictures from the news. This was Natalie and Judith. probably the luckiest hostages, if you can be a lucky hostage. They were the first 2 hostages freed on October 20th, which is actually my birthday. And I was out to lunch with a lot of the girls in the room. And I wished, when I blew out my candle, that the hostages would be freed. And then I got home and read the news, and 2 of them were freed. And they just happened to be 2 of the ones that are part of our extended family, which was wild. And then we did find out that's a little bit more about the rest of the family by this point. We knew, that we found out that Avshalom, Abiatar, and Lilach, and Paul, they were killed on October 7th. And the rest were being held in Gaza, and now these 2 are free. So, and then we also knew that even if they did come home, this shoe was the only material item left and what they would come home to. So there was, is this, oh no, is it working? Yeah, is it gonna work?
Vesham is a 8 years old boy.
The video is not showing. Hold on 1 second. How do I get the video to show? So, there's a story behind the shoe, and the Israeli soccer captain, we'll get the shoe up there. Basically, 11 of the players walked out on the field one evening and dedicated their game to Nave, the 8-year-old boy, and they all walked on the field with 1 shoe on. And we still, they were still hostages at the time. See if we can get the video up. Oh, I must have gone to the next one, maybe. I hope they don't show anything inappropriate. That's not the video, everybody. Just bear with us. It's, yeah, this post there. Oh, yeah. Oh, there it is. Okay, and then the sound.
Vesham is a 8 years old boy.
Thank you.
It's hard to speak at the moment, but I don't think that any of you can guess what is the story behind this shoe. That's all that left from his house. This kid is in Gaza Strip at the moment with seven people from his family. That's all what left from his house. His left shoe. We wait for him. Thank you. This shoe belonged to Nave Shoam. Nave?
So at the time, yeah, I was basically sitting Shiva on my phone, just like waiting for the next news article. And so eventually in the November truce deal, most of the rest of the women and children were released on the 2nd day of that 5-day truce. So Shoshan, the grandmother, Adi, her daughter, who's about my age, Yahel is her daughter, and Nave, Yahel is 4, Nave is 8, and Sharon and Noam, they were released on the 2nd day of the deal. We were notified the night before, and we knew that they were being released the next day, but we just didn't hold our breath until anything happened, because they're, anything can happen. Anyway, so when they came back, we just found out more details from the family. So this is Yuval. He's been the spokesperson. This is Adi's brother, Shoshan's son. So he's standing in front of the window that they came out of. So after hours of hiding under the bed in the safe room, the family decided to give themselves up to the terrorists. And they were yanked out of that window by the gunmen and marched in towards the direction of Gaza. And now just Tal, the husband, he's 39 years old. He's still in Gaza. And this is my personal picture from Hostage Square this summer. His pictures was actually one of the first ones as you walk through the tunnel in Hostage Square. Yeah, so we're all just praying for him and hope that he comes back safe. And yeah, it's been crazy, but now I'll move on to the pictures I'm up from the summer and my story from the summer. So when I first got to Israel, I went almost immediately to Hostage Square, and here are just some of my personal pictures. This is an art installation of like pitas, because that's what the hostages, if they were lucky, got to eat most of the time, if they got like one pita a day. What I found really cool and interesting was that the yellow ribbons are literally everywhere as a reminder of the hostages. This is a gate to one of the townhouses in my sister-in-law's neighborhood. On the cars, there's yellow ribbons on like almost every handle of every car. Just any like park or garden you walk by, there's like yellow ribbons, bumper stickers, and these cars really caught my attention. So on the highway from Tel Aviv to Haifa, every few miles are these cars that were from the death row, is what they call it, from this, where Nova Music Festival goers tried to escape. So they took the cars and painted them yellow. And I noticed that throughout the rest of the summer, there was like even more writing on the cars. Every time I passed by, I don't know, there'd just be more, I think, encouragement and just prayers for the hostages. And the street art there, it's just like so much nicer to see that than like Free Palestine. Like what we see here, the street art is very anti-Semitic, and there it's like all about Israel and the unity. So I found that to be very uplifting. And then aside from that, we really had a very close to normal summer, if it can be. It was like very sad. But at the same time, like we still went to the beach like we always do. That's my 1.5-year-old daughter, Ella, at the beach. I went to a wine tasting with my sister-in-law, Nisan, which is Tamir's sister, and my brother-in-law, Lior. And it was just so interesting, this wine tasting, because we were sitting at this table with these people here, and they were like, "You're visiting Israel? Like, why? We want to come to America. We want to leave Israel." A lot of Nisan and Lior's friends left for the summer just to get away, because it's a lot. It's like a whole other level of anxiety, a whole other host of things that you need to think about on the daily. Like, oh, maybe we shouldn't go to Haifa this weekend because, things are a little hostile in the north right now, or, just making decisions very differently there. So that's what one of my first experiences was. It was the first Friday or Thursday in Israel, and everyone was like, "Why are you here?" And I was like, I'm spending money, and I'm like the only tourist here. I'm doing this to help Israel, and to it was important for us to still go. And then this couple, her son, as we're sitting at this table, is fighting in Gaza, which is just so wild to me. Like I don't know, like the resilience and the strength of the Israelis is just unmatched. So wild. And here we visited Jerusalem. It was a different type of trip. Usually we like to walk through the shuk, but this time we said, no, we're just gonna we literally drove right up to the gate, put our notes in the wall, prayed. And the boys, they were taking a long time on the boys' side. And we were like, what were you guys doing? And I took a picture. This rabbi that they were talking to, does he look familiar, Mendy? Yeah, well, he knew you. He was like, oh, Rabbi Mendy Dubelski, I know him. And they were talking about Tampa and you, actually. So I put that in there. And we saw a Jerusalem light show. It was very beautiful. It told the story of Jerusalem. And then the boys went to camp. They went to day camp and had, a pretty normal summer. They did a bike camp, a surf camp. It was so fun for them. And I picked them up every day, and we did another activity. We would go to like an escape room or bowling, whatever you know, to keep them happy and busy. But then, you know, every now and again, you're reminded, like, here's what their GPS system looks like. So you always know where a bomb shelter is. That's something we don't see here in America. And the boys posed for a picture here, and my 10-year-old son Nadav got down and he's like, Mom, you know what? We were standing on a bomb shelter, right? I'm like, yeah, and you know, it's there to keep us safe. If a siren happens, we just go in there and we'll be safe. And it was interesting because this bomb shelter is locked from the outside, and there's a sign on the front of it that says, in the case of a siren, it will unlock. And I found that to be interesting. So this was the night that Ishmael Haniyeh and his bodyguard were blown up, I guess, in the Revolutionary Guard barracks in Tehran. So we were there when Israel attacked Iran. And now my brother-in-law, who was in the Talpiot unit, said to his wife, Nitzan, he was like, we don't need to worry. He was very calm throughout the entire war. You don't need to worry. You don't need to worry. Unless Israel attacks Iran, we're fine. And then, of course, it's like the weekend Nitzan and I decided to go to our cousin's 50th birthday in Italy, that I like made Nitzan come with me. She's like, I don't want to go. I'm like, everything's gonna be fine. We'll be good. This happened the night before. We're supposed to return to Israel. And it was just wild. So my son texted me that Roz, the babysitter, said they might have to go into the safe room. So just they had to play downstairs just in case, that all the kids slept downstairs that night. And then in the morning, I get a text from him, I survived. And I said, that's what we do as Jews. You know, we survive and we thrive. And it's just, you know, that's just what we do. And this is our whole family there in Haifa. And that's pretty much our story of the summer. I just wanted to end with one, something that my dad actually texted me today that I thought I'd share with everyone. So this is a little bit uplifting, and in light of the recent of the week, I guess, I thought I'd read it to end with this. So it's by an Emirati blogger named Amjad Taha. You dared to harm a wise and brave people on October 7th. You committed genocide, kidnapped their children, and desecrated their women. You thought they would fall, but they got up again and came back after 11 months to fix what only momentarily failed their intelligence. Now they will send you back 1,000 years to a time without technology, where ringing feels like death and beeping is a nightmare. You will be haunted by your shadow, too afraid to use any technology, cut off from the advanced world, and they will defeat you, not with bullets or tanks, but through the unbreakable will of brave and intelligent people. On a simple cup of coffee with one decisive click, they will seal your fate and the fate of anyone who dares to harm their children. It is a nation that the world respects. Lebanon, yesterday's beeper attacks and today's V-82 attack were not just military victories. They represent a victory for the Middle East over radicalism, a victory not only for Israel, but for everyone who opposes terrorism. And I thought I would end with that because we are surviving and thriving.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much, Marissa, not just for your words, but for reminding everyone from the beginning of October 7th that no matter how far we may be geographically, we really are one family. And I think you helped bring that home for a lot of people. You, Tamir, helped bridge that link between what they hear to what they see. So thank you so much. I'm gonna share just a little bit from my experience, my trip. I was fortunate to take my family to Israel for 12 days. We had initially planned a large group of people starting about 6 months ago, and then as we got closer to the trip, it dwindled for obvious reasons. And about 2 weeks before we were scheduled to go, we took out Mr. Khania in Iran. And I say we because I take credit for all of the IDF successes, none of their failures. And at that point, Delta canceled their tickets, their trips, and most of the people, eventually everybody on the group said, Rabbi, we're going to go a different time. And my wife and I really thought about what we wanted to do. Do we want to go? Not? What would be our experience with our kids? A lot of what I'm sure Marissa and Tamir were thinking and processing. And ultimately, we felt, as she iterated so beautifully, that this is our homeland. And we want our children to know that we don't abandon our homeland just because they're going through a difficult period. And so we felt that it was safe to do so. And we went. So I'm going to share a little bit of photos and videos from my experience. I'm going to move through it quickly because I want to get to what I think is the most important part of our discussion tonight, how we move forward from here. Because at this point, we need to know where we go. This is our arrival in Ben Gurion. As many of you know, when you arrive in Ben Gurion, you are faced immediately with pictures of the various hostages. But the saddest part of arriving in Ben Gurion, apart from seeing the hostages, is the fact that the airport is mostly empty. This is a recurring theme that at a time when Israel is usually overflowing with tourists from America, there are virtually none. Europe still has, especially France. You can't escape French tourists, so you know that they're there. But there are very, very few American tourists, and the people feel very isolated as a result, not to mention the loss of income that comes from the tourism industry. As Marissa told you, Hostage Square is a mind-numbing, earth-shattering, heart-wrenching place to visit. And it's the first place that we went to. We literally took our driver, put our stuff inside of the car, and went straight to Tel Aviv. This is a family from near Oz who's still waiting for their loved one to come back. We sat with them. And yes, they were very taken aback that we were there, especially with our kids. But it reminded them that they're not facing this battle alone. This is an installation, it's a permanent installation. You've seen some of these Shabbat tables set up around the world, but this is a permanent installation with each person that is being held hostage still represented there by the chair. People come and write notes. It's a very personal experience when you go there, and pausing and just recognizing, like I said, each number is an entire world. It's a great reminder of what we're praying for. We did a couple of different things on our trip. Some of them were classic tourist things like going to Masada and the Dead Sea. If you've done it once, you do not need to go again. And then we spent some time really uncovering what makes Israel so special, how it is a nation of heroes, everyday regular people that rise up in a moment's notice to support their fellow human being. Hatzalah is a volunteer ambulance service that has volunteers trained as EMTs or paramedics all over the country. Thousands of volunteers. And when someone gets alerted to an attack or a heart attack or anything in between, they respond. So we visited their headquarters where you can see they welcomed Chabad of Tampa. And we got a tour of the way that they operate, how they take all of their calls. And it's actually something, go back. It's actually something that we're working to start here in Tampa. So our goal is to train everyday lay leaders to become at least EMTs and to have medical equipment stationed in various Jewish centers around the city so that, God forbid, if there is an emergency, people can respond. And I actually took my NREMT today. That's the licensure, the final thing to become a licensed EMT. And I don't know if I passed, so keep me in your prayers. We went down to Sderot. If you're not familiar, Sderot is the largest. Yes, please. Of course. Absolutely. Absolutely. So what's different from Magen David Adom, which is also an incredible organization, Magen David Adom is an official municipal led organization, similar to like Tampa Fire Rescue. And those are paid professionals, and they're also obviously stationed. But Hatzalah works a little differently, and they're alerted to without going through the government. So because the municipalities in a lot of these cities were completely broken down, they were inundated with calls, they couldn't respond as quickly because they just didn't have the system set up to be able to do that. And so Hatzalah was very, very influential in being able to respond. They use ambucycles. And I don't know if you can see, I think I have that. Yeah, they use ambucycles, helicopters. So they have a variety of different equipment to be able to get down, and they have volunteers stationed all over. So when we spoke to the gentleman that was giving us the tour, he basically said that they just emptied out their entire warehouse and they just sent everything down to the south. And again, because it's volunteer led, they don't need to have as much planning, whereas government needs to be a little bit more calculated. And that was part of the challenge on October 7th. It took a long time for them to get organized. And I'm not saying this out of judgment, that's just the reality of the situation. So volunteer-led organizations, soldiers that didn't wait for orders necessarily, were able to make a much bigger impact in that moment. Sderot is the largest city on the border with Gaza. And this guy right here is the Chabad rabbi in Sderot. So we went to the Chabad Center, where they have a menorah built out of Katyusha rockets, because Sderot has had rockets coming for over a decade, long before the attacks. And this is what they do at the Chabad Center. So this rabbi was in Sderot on October 7th. It was Simchat Torah. So he went to shul. He went to synagogue. There was nobody else there, but it's a long story. The terrorists came specifically to the synagogue in Sderot looking for him because they knew exactly where they were going. They targeted specific sites. He's only 4 blocks from the police station where terrible massacre took place, and they had to explode the police station in order to stop the terrorists. We drove by there. So he eventually realized what was taking place, and he had to dodge bullets to get home. And you can see there are bullet holes in the Chabad Center, all over the Chabad Center. There are bullet holes. And he will tell you that he was sent here. The Rebbe sent him here. This is his place. He's not going anywhere. So he's a very proud and joyful person. Throughout our trip to Israel, we were able to support as many IDF soldiers as possible. We made a goal of trying to give out 1,000 meals. We got close to about 500, which is why I'm planning to go back in November. We'll talk about that later. This is at a cafe in Sderot. We stopped for lunch. So we bought them their lunch, and then they told us that one of their friends was stationed in Sderot and lost their lives, a soldier, on October 7th. And they have a salad that she loved to order at this restaurant. So they named the salad now in perpetuity after her. And we ordered the salad. And this gentleman is a paramedic in the military. And he thought it was hilarious that a rabbi had nothing better to do with his life than to become an EMT. So we had a good time together. We went from there to a base. I'm not going to include any names on the bases for obvious reasons, but it's a southern base, very close to Southern Command. And this is a base where reservist units come, train right before they go into Gaza. So they make sure that they're on the same page, they have all the equipment, and then they go from there into Gaza. This is a rabbi who is a Chabad rabbi in Cyprus, not Cyprus, Albania. I'm sorry, I believe he's in Albania, okay? But he is in the reservist as a military chaplain. Well, he hired another rabbi to take over his Chabad Center in Albania, and this is now what he does full time. And he is a passionate guy. So bring all the soldiers out and we put up mezuzot on their new barracks. We spent time with them. We
בתחילת המלחמה, קבע למעלה מ-4,000 מזוזות.
He has helped put up over 4,000 mezuzahs in the last 10 months, together with my cousin, who is a sofer. So he writes the mezuzahs, and then they go all around to bases. They help put them up. And I have another cousin in Brooklyn that raises the money to support this operation. What is going on? These are my shoes. Okay, my dear friend Mark bought me these shoes, and he said, Rabbi, you have to wear them on your trip. And I said, they're beautiful shoes, but I want to walk in the footsteps of heroes. So when I went to the base, I had the soldiers sign the shoes. You'd be shocked how excited the soldiers were. They loved the fact that this represented their unit, their group, and they would carry all of their names back. They were inspecting each other's signatures. So we were able to do that as a fun way to celebrate them. And if you look right here, so these are our envelopes. We raised thousands of dollars since the start of October 7th, over $580,000. We purchased equipment mostly. That includes a lot of drones. Drones cost about $9,600 a piece. We purchased vests and helmets and many other stuff. But we wanted to give out something tangible that people could go and just buy themselves a nice meal. So we got thousands of $10 bills, put them in nice envelopes, and we gave them out to soldiers all over the country. And the coolest part of it was my children gave it out most of the time. And not only was it an incredible experience for the kids, it was an incredible experience for the soldiers to be getting it from a child that traveled so far to give it out to them. And that really made the trip extremely special. These are just some more photos. So if you look at this, right, as we were finishing up our tour, this is a group that's loading a bus, a unit that's going straight into Gaza right now. It's a reservist unit from Tzanchanim, paratroopers, and they were loading up their bus. And we kind of started singing for them and so on. So one of the guys comes out and asks, hey, what's the deal? He goes over to the rabbi, who are these people? And the rabbi's like, oh, it's a group visiting, this and that. The guy comes over to me and he already has a list of things that they're missing. He's about to go into war. He has a list of things they're missing, take his number, and we start to work together. Hopefully we're going to be able to get him some things that he's missing in his items. But these are young kids and they are so overwhelmingly positive and confident. It's really incredible. We went from there to Kibbutz Re'im. That's the site of the Nova Festival. And yes, we did go with our children, but our belief is that we want to help our children to understand that pain and difficulty is part of human nature, but to see it in a positive light. And our younger children probably didn't fully grasp and understand, but our older three children, which are 16, 13, and 12, did. And it was a very special experience for everybody that was there. By divine providence, we happened to be there on the 15th of Av, which is known in Israel as the Day of Love. It actually has a biblical origin, which most modern day Israelis probably are not aware of, but it's a modern day of love. And so there was a huge group that came out to lead a prayer, and we were able to say Kaddish for them and say a psalm for them. They were very appreciative. So this is them gathered in prayer and then sending balloons with hearts. There was a number of survivors from the actual massacre that were there. Dina is having a challah bake next Thursday night. She's going to talk about her friend that she met and what she learned from her, what she taught her. Just an incredible person, and what it was like during those 8 hours that she was trapped there at the festival. I want to make sure that you understand that as painful and as difficult as this moment is, if you continue to ask the question, what can I do to help? You will find the strength and the courage, because that's what these people do. They find incredible strength and courage. These soldiers all have loved ones that have passed or loved ones that are being held, and they put on their uniform and they go out, they serve. These are reservists. Some of these people are married, they have kids, they have jobs, they drop everything and they go. This is the closest base to the border with Gaza. And this base was actually completely taken over. There was a group of Golani soldiers that were there on October 7th. Quite a number were killed, unfortunately. And in fact, I couldn't take a picture, but they have a little synagogue, as every base in Israel does. The Torah scroll was taken by a terrorist who started to march into Gaza, and an injured soldier saw what was happening. He stood up and he ran, following this guy by himself, which is obviously insane, neutralized the terrorist and brought the Torah back. And the Torah is back inside. And obviously the place has been cleaned up and now it is an active base. All I'll say is it's good that we came at night. So nobody that came in the group really knew how close it was, but it's a football field away from the border. So at light, if you would have looked, you would have seen exactly where we are. And what did we do there? We dance and we sang. Not sure why we can't see the videos. That's what we did. Oh, that one's working. And then I signed my second pair of shoes. So I got one shoe from each base and they absolutely loved it. They would pass it around. They would give it to their friends. They had to make sure that everybody signed the shoe. This is our unit. Was wonderful. We sponsored a full barbecue for the entire base, 150 people. So these guys, for one night, all they had to do was eat, drink, dance, and absolutely nothing else. And while we were in middle, one unit has to stop, go on patrol, and a new group comes out, literally from Gaza. They take off their equipment and they come out to eat and they dance. And that's the way it is there. This guy actually hitched a ride with us back. He's an observant soldier. He lives in Jerusalem, which is where we were going back. It was basically 11:30 at night. Nobody wanted to leave. The soldiers were like, guys, you'll just spend the night in our barracks. And Tzvi, my son's like, yeah, it's actually more comfortable than my bed back at the house. So we'll leave that for now. But this guy hitched a ride back with us. He's got two children, two small kids. One's only a few months old. It's now his second tour in Gaza. And it's not even a question. You do what you have to do. You leave, you go, you serve. It's a nation of heroes, truly remarkable and incredible. And to spend even a little bit of time with them was just a privilege. So when I say that we've been sponsoring and supporting them with equipment, that continues till this very day. There's a unit of reservists called the Jerusalem Brigade. And in the last, not recently, but 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, they had a number of soldiers, unfortunately, that lost their lives. But we have been in touch with this unit for a few months, working with them on something that we could make a contribution to them. When I spoke to their operations officer, he kind of said, you know what, instead of doing a drone, which is something that only one person is going to use, we're going to do a special scope that magnifies the target. And this way we can buy 20 of them and give them out. And we're going to give them to the unit that lost their friends recently. So in middle of the barbecue, remember we're right on the border. These guys drive out from Gaza, these two soldiers, they come and they meet us there. We have to buy it in Israel and then get it transported, then bring it down on the bus. They meet us there, and then this is the next day, them sending a little note.
Well, Bendy, thank you so much for the magnifier. That will shoot further, bigger, sharper, and more accurate. We're here on the front line, shooting it every day. Thank you so much.
So there are a lot of ways that you can be helpful. A lot of things that you can do if you just keep asking the question, what can I do to help? Where can I show my support and make a difference?
That's all I can do, this guy.
Oh, these guys were hilarious. So the guard at the gate sees these guys pull up and he's like, are you lost? And they're like, yeah, we were looking for, Beit Hanun, and we got stuck over here. That's an area in Gaza. So they see me giving them supplies. So the guys at the base are like, and what about us? What do we get? So it's like Christmas in July kind of deal. This is afterwards we went to Hebron. Hebron is the city of the patriarchs. Unfortunately, because it's in Judea and Samaria, it's not visited quite as much. But after going to the Kotel in Jerusalem, this is the most important site to visit in Israel. And I can say that emphatically. Before Jerusalem was the capital of Israel, Hebron was the capital in Israel. Abraham made Hebron his capital, and not until King David was it established in Jerusalem. So we went there, we went to the cave of the matriarchs and patriarchs, opportunity to see more of our soldiers, give out gifts to them. The kids speak limited Hebrew, but they know how to say matana, which means a gift. And one of the biggest things for us, for Dina and I, was we did not want our kids to go and come back afraid, scared, nervous. We wanted them to have that love and that joy for Israel that we both share. And I can tell you 100% they came back asking me one simple question. So are we going back next summer? So I think that we sometimes underestimate what our kids are capable of. It really depends on us. If we feel confident and positive and joyful, then they will feel the same way.
Oh my goodness, Sissy.
This is the actual cave where Abraham and Sarah, Isaac, Rebecca, Leah, and Jacob are buried, and according to tradition, including Adam and Eve. And we were fortunate enough, this is the rabbi for Chabad of Hebron, who, by the way, carries an Uzi because he's also a reservist. And the same night that we came out, there was a Torah scroll dedication. A rabbi and one of his community members in Parkland, Florida, flew to Hebron and they finished a Torah scroll. And they brought a large group of specifically women soldiers out to celebrate at a concert. So we had a little bit of that experience, which was pretty mind-blowing. That's our daughters dancing with the soldiers. So you can see we have these envelopes, hundreds of envelopes we were able to give out every time. This guy in the top right corner did not want to take an envelope, and he's not alone. These guys are so proud of what they do. They don't want to take a gift. They see it as them simply doing what they have to do. So I told him, hold on to it. When you see another soldier that you think is having a bit of a down day, this will be a pick-me-up. He said, okay. That's in the shuk, by the way. Don't worry, we covered it for you, Marissa. Of course, the heartbeat of Israel is Jerusalem, and the heartbeat of Jerusalem is the Kotel, the Western Wall. And what I wrote this in my column last week. What makes Israel so special is that faith is a cornerstone and pillar of people that live there, whether they consider themselves religious or not. Irregardless, when you speak to a soldier, they speak, yeah, todah lakel, God willing, it's going to be good. The language is different. Soldiers come and pray at the Kotel that have no religious background whatsoever, including these two young ladies who my daughters ended up meeting and chatting with and talking with. And I think that's something that we need to learn here in the United States. We get so hung up on titles and this and that. We lose sight of that basic foundation, which is at our core and brings us all together. This is Elia. Elia actually lived here in Tampa for a year and a half. He was one of our young professionals, was very involved when he lived there. He moved back to Israel. He works in a tech company. He's now married. He has a child, Baruch Hashem. And during since October 7th, we've helped him. He is Chief Sergeant Major for a reserve unit in Sanchanim in the paratroopers. He spent 4 months inside Gaza. He's now preparing to take his unit up north. We helped him with supplies. He said, Mendy, you can't leave Israel before I see you and I give you a hug. But he had a medical emergency and he wasn't able to meet us in Jerusalem. So he literally drove to the airport to meet us right before we got on our flight. And he gave us some special necklaces that we had made customized for people that supported the unit. And he's just a superhuman being. Just a superhuman being. And I just want to finish up. This is Tzvi and I in a Gaza tunnel. So, if you want to no, I'm just kidding. That's not a Gaza tunnel. That is a water tunnel that is in the city of David. Very cool place to visit. But We're going to switch directions now. Before we do, I want to just reiterate, I think that the most important thing that you can do is something. Something, anything. Don't allow yourself to become callous. It's human nature. You can only live on adrenaline for so long, and then your body has to start to come down in order to protect itself. The reality is, this is not behind us. This is not something we make peace with. This is something that we continue to experience and work through, but in a positive and productive way. There are a lot of different organizations you could support, a lot of different things you could do. I'm sure Marissa can give you options. We are happy to give you options as well, but most important thing is to do something. Now, you've got a booklet. There should be enough for everybody. There's a few for the imaginary people that are sitting over there. Brian, bring a couple over to the other side too, if you can. We're going to take about 15 minutes before we finish this program. And what I want to do in those 15 minutes is address the current situation from the one source that matters most. It's not CNN, it's not Fox News, it's not Arutz Sheva. The one source that matters most for a Jewish person is the Torah. The Torah is our Bible. It is our foundation. And the word Torah, which is translated as Bible, actually means something completely different. Torah means instruction, guide, manual. So when you buy a computer, it comes with a manual. And it tells you how you're supposed to use it. But invariably, everybody will know that sometimes you malfunction. The computer doesn't work as it's supposed to. So what do? In the back, you go to the troubleshooting section. And the people that designed this computer, probably in a sweatshop in China somewhere, right? They tell you, here's what to do in order to fix this computer. And of course, you follow it, and hopefully that gets it back to full function. Well, that's what the Torah is. The Torah is our guide, our instruction booklet, our manual on how to live life. And when things aren't going the way they should be going, when we experience pain and difficulty and challenge, that's where we come to find solace and comfort, but also direction so that we can move forward. Last week, we talked extensively about the reality that the current situation is not sustainable. And I don't mean the current situation since October 7th. I mean the current situation since 1948. Because the reality, and those of you that weren't here last week, you can take home the booklet. It's yours to keep. It has a synopsis. This is a cycle that has repeated itself over and over and over again. And at some point, we know what the definition of insanity is. We need to stop and say, this doesn't work. And it starts with us, as we spoke about last week, because we can look at the rest of the world and say, why don't they understand what's happening? How can they be so oblivious, so blind to the reality that's happening right there in front of them? But I hate to tell you, many of us are blind. Many of us do not fully understand what's happening and why it's happening, and instinctively think that somehow, if we ask for permission to exist or to continue to live in our homeland, then we will somehow endear and engender peace and love and support. And that has flat out failed. So last week, we established we need to know clearly what is our right to this land, how we came to this land, why we are there, and that we are not going anywhere. Because strength, exuding strength engenders respect. Today, I want to talk about how you fight a battle. What is the premise? Because there's a lot of conversation about, well, I understand that Israel has a right to defend itself, right? This is a perfect peace. Israel has the right to defend itself, no doubt. But the way they do it is unjust. They can't do this, you can't do that, and this is not right, and this is not right. This is a very standard line that you hear. And you might stop and say, hey, there's some truth to that. Can you just kill people indiscriminately? Of course not. So how do you fight this battle? What is the premise? What is the foundation for a person to defend themselves? And the beauty of our tradition is that it is discussed and explored over and over again in every detailed way that you can imagine. So we just have to go back to the tradition to see what it says. First text is on page 19, text 4. The Torah instructs us, if one is coming to kill you, rise up to kill them first. You might be familiar with stand your ground. That's a pretty popular, if you're, we have an attorney, right? You know that stand your ground. It's the state of Florida. We're very proud of this law, but it's not new. It wasn't invented by the state of Florida. This is written in the Talmud 2,100 years ago. Haba lahargo yashkem yargo. Someone comes with the intention to kill you, you should rise up and kill them first. Not, you can rise up and kill them first. You should rise up and kill them first. And there's a big difference between them. Because Judaism, above all else, values human life. In fact, of all the commandments in the Torah, there's 613 commandments. When I went to take my test today, you have to empty out your pockets. You're not supposed to have any hats. So I had to explain my yarmulke, and then the lady wanted to know about tzitzit. She's like, what's with those strings? Are they, maybe you can conceal some, I don't know, microchip with an answer key. I don't know. And I explained to her, it reminds you of the 600. She says, 613 commandments? I thought there were just 10. So what she tells me. I said, that's how they got us hooked. We didn't read the fine print. So the Torah says, of the 613 commandments, if someone's life is in jeopardy, you should transgress 610 of them in order to protect human life. The only 3 that you cannot transgress are illicit relationships, idolatry, and murder. Anything else, not only you can, you should transgress, do everything possible to protect human life. And that's why if you see someone coming with the intention to kill, not just you, but anyone else, you have an obligation to protect that individual, because life is above all else. And that forms the foundation for what happened in 1967. When Israel, a young country, realized that they were about to be attacked, they preempted that attack, a 6-day war, and they decimated their enemies all around them. Why? Because they preemptively took action. They didn't wait to be attacked. They said, this is our principle. We are a Jewish state, and this is a Jewish principle. And that's why the war ended in how many days? 6 days. With an incredible, yes, there were losses, but an incredible short amount of losses. Whereas in the Yom Kippur War, the exact opposite happened. Intelligence was gathered. And again, I'm not here to point blame. I'm simply telling you the facts. Intelligence was gathered, and the decision was made at the upper echelon not to preemptively attack. There was pressure from the United States or internal pressure. And what happened? The Yom Kippur War had considerably more losses, more than triple the losses of the 6-day war. Why? Because of this simple reality. They did not preemptively strike. They did not recognize that life was in danger and do everything possible to protect human life. Now, I say human life specifically. I didn't say protect Jewish lives, as I'm going to explain in just a minute. Interestingly enough, I thought this was really cool. After the Yom Kippur War in 1973, 3 years later, 2 young Jewish researchers did an evaluation on what would have happened if they would have preemptively attacked Syria and some of the other countries rather than waiting to be attacked on Yom Kippur. And one of them, his name was Martin Indyk. And he eventually, many moons later, became the ambassador from the United States to Israel. And they wrote in their research paper, number 1, America would have still sent their support, which they threatened to withhold. And number 2, they would have lost 1/5 of the people that they lost. This was their research told them. So the first thing we need to know when we are establishing a policy, procedures for how we protect our state and our people, how we defend ourselves, is that we protect life first and foremost. And even the threat, just the mere threat that somebody would have to take a human life already is a reason enough for us to eliminate that threat, for us to eliminate that threat. Now, part of the reason why they didn't attack, as I said, in 1973, was because the United States threatened that if they would attack, then they would not give them their support. This is a real challenge. We live in the United States, right? And it's a wonderful country. I'm going to show you a couple of videos from the Rebbe, and it's mind-blowing because it's as if the Rebbe was talking in this past week or this past month, how relevant the conversation is. And the Rebbe spoke about how the United States is a country of kindness. But the Rebbe addressed this specific issue about what will happen if the United States withholds their support, because that's something that we're struggling with. That's not a theoretical thing. We've heard leadership here in this country say, Israel does this or Israel does that, then we will not be there necessarily to support them. So here's what the Rebbe said on this issue.
Wie kommt es an das nicht vor dem Multimillionen Jahren hat mich gefunden eine Berechtigung. Die Chance hat gesehen, hat gebracht, dass 9. Tag, das 8. Tag, Neshek von Nazis Brief, hat mir der Demo gefragt, als Segner, wo 10 nie gefolgt, es war gewähnt an Rochemes Manner, hat mir Segner geschickt, den Neshek auf 9. Tag. Was in der ganze Absorge fällt der Rike. Hat wohl gesehen an Jochemes Manner, wo die mir gedacht haben, an Jochome bemäschig von Mainzer. Na, wie sie gewähnt in die 6 Tage, als die gerufene 6 Tage, Jochome, so gesehen als Sachbrei, der mit Tochen Gommel.
So we're miscalculating things because we're always reactive, we're always defensive. If you preempt and you have surprise, then you have the ability to make sure that you fight that battle and your losses. Therefore, your supplies are so much less. So we're always in a weakened defensive position and therefore always needing more support because we allow ourselves to be put in that position rather than assuming a position of strength and then using that to create the kind of intimidation necessary to keep our enemies at bay. You know, the notion that we need someone's permission to exist is something that here in the United States we're very sensitive to, right? We all understand freedom and liberty. It's the cornerstone upon which this country was founded. Founders left England where they felt that there was tyranny, right? Give me liberty or give me death. And they came to this country because unalienable rights were so important to them: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And yet somehow we believe that when it comes to Israel, we need someone else's permission just to exist, just to be allowed to live in this land in peace. And that creates the weakness upon which other nations of the world feed. So how do we change this mentality? How do we change mentality? Because that is something I'm going to answer. I take all the questions at the end, Catherine, before the people turn into, yes, Cinderella. How do we change the mentality? Because it's one thing to say, it's another thing to do. And that means our mentality. Our mentality. Because if you see young people today and they're struggling to have that conviction, that strength, that courage that says, this is who I am, these are my people, this is my land. Maybe some of it has to do with TikTok and some of it has to do with what happens in college campuses, but a lot of it has to do with us. Are they getting from us that conviction and that strength and that determination? Or are we ourselves waffling, unsure of how to respond? It starts with us. Change starts with us. So when you see how the Torah looks at waging war on an enemy, you understand that although it may seem harsh, in reality, being firm and strong upfront and initially actually saves lives, not just your own lives, but your enemies' lives too. Because when you are pulled out into a protracted affair that goes on for days and weeks and months, there's no victor. There's no real progress. There's just continued death on both sides. And that's what we're seeing. When you show strength and conviction, and your enemy sees that you will not be intimidated, and there will be serious consequences for even the threat of an attack, because that's our principle. We defend life. When they see that, then it pauses them in their tracks before they even attack. So the notion that doing nothing is somehow kind and compassionate, well, the proof is in the pudding. It's not working for anyone. Definitely not working for us. It's not working for them either. Judaism does not celebrate death in any way, shape, or form. That's not who we are. Not the death of a Jewish person or the death of any other human being. Why? Because it's in our book. Every human was created in a divine image. It's not my words. That's what it says in Genesis. Every human. So the notion that I would somehow be joyful at destroying a divine image is ludicrous. Does it need to be done? Absolutely, in certain cases. But doing nothing only makes me pull this out, draw it out, and we see what happens. The numbers rise and rise and rise. Text 6. In order to expedite God's protection, the Rebbe gave out a dollar bill for charity, saying that charity is a way that we can bring more merit to our people. But then he says here at the end, swiftly completing the operation will also prevent unnecessary enemy casualties. They too are human beings created in the image of God, and it is the duty of the Jew to also care for the lives of each and every non-Jew. The same person that's advocating for a preemptive strike is also telling you it's designed to limit casualties. To limit casualties, because when you do nothing, or when you wait till someone else gives you permission to do something, you ultimately lead to a greater loss of human life. This is not a theoretical thing. This is what we've seen happen. So how do we respond? How do we respond? I hope that you'll take home this booklet, because there are a lot of important texts that you can go through, but I want to jump ahead. I'll show you one final video.
The Israelis began advancing in all fronts, and they arrived at more or less 40 kilometers from Damascus.
This is in the Yom Kippur War.
It was already the 5th day of the war. I get a call from Benjamin Klein. The Rebbe said, go and ask Dayan to enter Damascus.
בשמחת תורה, אני ושלמה לוין, הקונסול, ניסינו להסביר לרבי שמשה דיין פוחד מהתערבות רוסית לטובתם של הערבים, ואז מצבנו יהיה רע מאוד, לא בטוח מה יעשו האמריקאים. הרבי אמר לו, אין טעם, אין היגיון בתפיסה הזאת. הוא אומר שהרוסים סתם מאיימים, לא צריך לחשוש מהרוסים. האמריקאים מעוניינים שאנחנו ננצח את הסורים, הם רק לא אומרים לנו את זה. והרבי ביקש מאיתנו, בתום שיחה ארוכה מאוד, שנחזור עוד באותו ערב, ולטלפן, כל אחד למישהו מכיר, הוא יכול לטלפן, לראש הממשלה, או לשר הביטחון, או למישהו אחר מראשי השלטון בישראל, תגידו בשמי שישראל צריכה לסיים את מלחמת יום הכיפורים בכיבושה של דמשק.
Dayan took it very seriously. He said to me, I cannot do it from a manpower point of view. I called back Benjamin, and then the Rebbe was on the line. The Rebbe's answer was, it's a big mistake. It's a big mistake. That's all.
הוא אמר לי, תשמע, מלחמת יום כיפור, תוצאות לא טובות. אומר, רבי, תראה, מבחינה צבאית, אנחנו הגענו ל101 קילומטר מהבירה המצרית. אנחנו הגענו ל40 קילומטר מהבירה הסורית. הוא אומר, לא. מנצחים, הרבי אומר, זה שכובשים את הבירות. אמרתי, כן, אבל הוא ביולוגיסטיות אומר, מה שרון סיפר שאין לו דלק? הוא היה צריך להשתמש בדלק שהמצרים הכינו בשבילם. על המצרים, אומר הרבי, תכננו התקפה, כלומר, לאורך הדרכים והנתיבים, בטוח שהיה לה מצבורי דלק. ולמה לא השתמשו בדלק הזה ולהגיע לבירות?
The point is very simple. If we don't want to engage this cycle, which has happened over and over and over again, there's a list in your thing. You'll look at it and you'll cry. You'll cry because you'll understand October 7th did not happen. They say October 7th didn't happen in a vacuum. They say it for one reason, but it's true. This cycle has gone on far too long. The change starts with us. It starts with us recognizing that we need to empower. It's us. We need to empower Israel and the Jewish people to stand firm. And standing firm means doing what is necessary to have complete and total victory. The Rebbe didn't want them to take over Damascus or Cairo. The Rebbe said, park your tanks there for 24 hours. Establish your dominance. Establish what you are ready to do and what you are capable of. Because then they will respect you. You won't have to take more human life. And you definitely won't have to lose your own. But that kind of conviction has to start with us. With us. And it starts with Jews in the United States. It starts with Jews around the world, letting Israel know, we have your back. We support you. Whatever you need to get the job done, we'll be here to make sure you have it. Just like these soldiers, answering the call at the drop of a hat. They have political feelings. They have this, they have that. Of course, there's guys that are secular and more religious, all in the same unit. Left, right, middle. You know, in the United States, we have two big parties. They have like 47. And they're all represented in every unit. And the minute that they call, all of that goes out the window. They put on their uniform and everything else becomes non-important. That has to be our attitude right now, moving forward. We need to change the way that we look at ourselves and our homeland. And make no mistake, this is not just an attack on Israel. This is an attack on Jewish people. And in that, we've seen all of a sudden anti-Semitism has grown around the world. Why? This is a geographical issue, right? I'm an American. I pay my taxes, right? Just like you. There's no difference between us. And yet somehow we've been made aware that there is a difference, whether we accept it or not. Well, it's time that we did accept it, fully accept it. In one of the videos later on, Prime Minister Rabin talks about his conversation with the Rebbe, where the Rebbe told him that in the Torah it says the Jewish people were destined to live alone. Am levadad yishkov. And he had a hard time with that. He famously said it's come time for Israel to enter into the community of nations. And that precipitated the Oslo Accords. But he talks about his conversation, how the Rebbe said, we were chosen for a unique path. And taking that unique path means that sometimes we will have to stand alone, but we choose to do so. Not because we're ostracized, but because we know that we are special. And when we carry that conviction and that confidence and that strength, it exudes from each and every one of us. It's infectious. Our children will carry it, and they'll carry it with their friends, and so on and so forth. And then the world will recognize this one simple fact, that Israel is a unique power, a special power, not just because they have great startups and great technology, and the food is so incredible, and they have such good-looking soldiers, right, as Marissa knows. The reason why Israel is so amazing is because it is the Holy Land. It is the land that God chose as special. As the Bible says, the Torah says, the land that God's eyes rest upon it from the beginning of the year till the end of the year. It's a special place. And when we tap into that, we have the strength and the courage and the conviction to overcome any obstacle that may be placed in our way. So as you're preparing for the new year, in 2 weeks' time, just under 2 weeks' time. Take a minute, take a moment. And if you're lucky enough to be with a spouse, with children, bring them into the conversation and talk to them about what it means to be Jewish and how positive, how joyful, how special, how lucky we are that we get to carry this path forward. And that God gave us a gift, an eternal inheritance. This is what the language that the Torah says about Israel, an eternal inheritance. This land, this special land, was given to us. Would have been nice if it had a little bit more oil, but talk to your family about it. Talk to your friends about it. Talk to yourself about it. Find that strength and the conviction and the confidence, and commit yourself to doing more to set yourself as a proud, active Jewish person and a proud supporter of Israel. And I guarantee you that if you do that over the next 2 weeks, when you show up in Shul on Rosh Hashanah, you'll feel more hopeful and optimistic than you did last year before October 7th. And that is one thing I'll leave you with tonight. You talk to some of these soldiers, and for many of the soldiers, this is their first real conflict. Because in the previous conflicts that happened in Gaza, or even in the Second Lebanon War, it was a very limited group of soldiers that actually saw action. So for a lot of these soldiers, this is really their first experience. And for the citizens, for the most part, the younger citizens, this is their first experience. And they will tell you, as many, I'm sure Marissa heard, that now more than ever, they realize the special duty that they have to be living in the Jewish homeland and to protect and defend the Jewish homeland. Well, it's time that we share that burden and carry that burden together with them. So thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. But I really hope that everybody will pick up and carry this torch and support each other and invigorate each other, because that's what we need. We need a community that supports, that hugs, that's there to listen and there to cry and there to laugh and really celebrate everything that makes us so special. And when we do that, when we put together all of these petty differences, I say, you say, I vote, you vote, all these things that really are secondary, when we put that aside and we unite around these simple truths, there's no one and nothing that can defeat us. I want to wish everybody a Shana Tova, happy, healthy, and sweet new year. And let us pray, as we will in 2 weeks' time, that God will give everybody a year of success, a year of good health. As we say on Rosh Hashanah, it is written, and in Yom Kippur it is sealed, who will live and who will die. There will be no more death. First of all of our hostages will come home safely. Our soldiers will complete their victory, and that there will be no more death, not in our communities, not in any communities. And as we pray for the coming of Mashiach, what does it say? That when the Messiah comes, death will be eradicated from the earth permanently. That is who we are. And that is who we will always be. Thank you again. Please take Raglach on your way out. It's a mitzvah. Put them in your pocket. Nobody will judge you, I promise.